Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson. Aye. Ms. Lummis. Ms. Lummis. Aye. Mr. Scott. Mr. Scott of Florida. Aye. Mr. Lee. Aye. Mr. Lee. Aye.
The yeas are 51, the nays are 49. The motion is agreed to. The clerk will report the bill.
Calendar number 107, H.R. 1, an act to provide for reconciliation pursuant to Title II of H. Con. Res. 14.
I call up amendment number 2360.
The clerk will report.
The senator from South Dakota, Mr. Thune, proposes an amendment number 2360.
Mr. President, I ask consent the reading be dispensed with.
Reserving the right to object.
Is there?
And I will object. Senate Republicans are scrambling to pass a radical bill released to the public in the dead of night, praying the American people don't realize what's in it. If Senate Republicans won't tell the American people what's in this bill, then Democrats are going to force this chamber to read it from start to finish. I object.
Objections heard. All right. The clerk will read the amendment.
Strike all after the enacting clause and insert the following. Section 1, short title. This act may be cited as the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. Section 2, table of contents. The table of contents of this act is as follows. Section 1, short title. Section 2, table of contents. Title 1, Committee on Agriculture, Nutrition, and Forestry. Subtitle A, Nutrition. Section 10101, Reevaluation of Thrifty Food Plan. Section 10102, modifications to SNAP work requirements for able-bodied adults. Section 10103, availability of standard utility allowances based on receipt on energy assistance. Section 10104, restrictions on internet expenses. Section 10105, matching funds requirements. Section 10106, administrative cost sharing. Section 10107, national education and obesity prevention grant programs. Section 10108, alien SNAP eligibility. Subtitle B, forestry. Section 10201, rescissions of amounts for forestry. Subtitle C, commodities. Section 10301, effective reference price. Section 10302, base acres. Section 10303, producer election. Section 10304, price loss coverage. Section 10305, agriculture risk coverage. Section 10306, equitable treatment of certain entities. Section 10307, payment limitations. Section 10308, adjusted gross income limitation. Section 10309, marketing loans. Section 10310, repayment of marketing loans. Section 10311, economic adjustment assistance for textile mills. Section 10312, sugar price updates. Section 10313, dairy policy updates. Section 10314, implementation. Subtitle D, disaster assistance programs. Section 10401, supplemental agriculture disaster assistance. Subtitle E, crop insurance. Section 10501, beginning farmer and rancher benefit. Section 10502, area-based crop insurance coverage and affordability. Section 10503, administrative and operative expense adjustments. Section 10504, premium support. Section 10505, program compliance and integrity. Section 10506, reviews, compliance, and integrity. Section 10507, poultry insurance pilot program. Subtitle F, additional investments in rural America. Section 10601, conservation. Section 10602, supplemental agriculture trade promotion program. Section 10603, nutrition. Section 10604, research. Section 10605, energy. Section 10606, horticulture. Section 10607, miscellaneous. Title II, Committee on Armed Services. Section 2001, enhancement of Department of Defense resources for improving the quality of life for military personnel. Section 20002, enhancement of Department of Defense resources for shipbuilding. Section 20003, enhancement of Department of Defense resources for integrated air and missile defense. Just write pending on that. Get them to send it out. Section 20004, enhancement of Department of Defense resources for munitions and defense supply chain resiliency. Section 20005, enhancement of Department of Defense resources for scaling low-cost weapons into production. Section 20006, enhancement of Department of Defense resources for improving the efficiency and cybersecurity of the Department of Defense. Section 20007, enhancement of Department of Defense resources for air superiority. Section 20008, enhancement of resources for nuclear forces. Section 20009, enhancement of Department of Defense resources to improve capabilities of United States Indo-Pacific Command. Section 20010, enhancement of Department of Defense resources for improving the readiness of the Department of Defense. Section 20011, improving Department of Defense border support and counter-drug missions. Section 20012, Department of Defense oversight. Section 20013, military construction projects authorized. Section 20014, multi-year operational plan. Title III, Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs. Section 30001, funding cap for the Bureau of Consumer Financial Protection. Section 30002, rescission of funds for green and resilient retrofit program for multifamily housing. Section 30003, Securities and Exchange Commission Reserve Fund. Section 30004, Appropriations for Defense Production Act. Title IV, Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation. Section 40001, Coast Guard Mission Readiness. Section 40002, Spectrum Auctions. Section 40003, Air Traffic Control Improvements. Section 40004, Space Launch and Reentry Licensing and Permitting User Fees. Section 40005, Mars Missions, Artemis Mission, and Moon to Mars Program. Section 40006, Corporate Average Fuel Economy Civil Penalties. Section 40007, Payment for Lease of Metropolitan Washington Airports. Section 40008, Rescission of certain amounts for the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration. Section 40009, Reduction in annual transfers to Travel Promotion Fund. Section 40010, Treatment of unobligated funds for alternative fuel and low-emission aviation technology. Section 40011, rescission of amounts appropriated for Public Wireless Supply Chain Innovation Fund. Section 40012, support for artificial intelligence under the Broadband Equity, Access, and Deployment Program. Title V, Committee on Energy and Natural Resources. Subtitle A, Oil and Gas Leasing. Section 50101, Onshore Oil and Gas Leasing. Section 50102, Offshore Oil and Gas Leasing. Section 50103, Royalties on Extracted Methane. Section 50104, Alaska Oil and Gas Leasing. Section 50105, National Petroleum Reserve, Alaska. Subtitle B, Mining. Section 50201, Coal Leasing. Section 50202, Coal Royalty. Section 50203, Leases for Known Recoverable Coal Resources. Section 50204, Authorization to Mine Federal Coal. Subtitle C, Lands. Section 50301. Section 50302, Timber Sales and Long-Term Contracting for the Forest Service and the Bureau of Land Management. Section 50303, Renewable Energy Fees on Federal Land. Section 50304, Renewable Energy Revenue Sharing. Section 50305, Rescission of National Park Service and Bureau of Land Management Funds. Section 50306, Celebrating America's 250th Anniversary. Subtitle D, Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Section 50401, Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Section 50402, Repeals Rescissions. Section 50403, Energy Dominance Financing. Section 50404, Transformational Artificial Intelligence Models. Subtitle E, Water. Section 50501, Water Conveyance and Surface Water Storage Enhancement. Title VI, Committee on Environment and Public Works. Section 60001, Rescission of Funding for Clean Heavy-Duty Vehicles. Section 60002, Repeal of Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. Section 60003, Rescission of Funding for Diesel Emission Reductions. Section 60004, Rescission of Funding to Address Air Pollution. Section 60005, Rescission of Funding to Address Air Pollution at Schools. Section 60006, rescission of funding for low emissions electricity program. Section 60007, rescission of funding for Section 211.0 of the Clean Air Act. Section 60008, rescission of funding for implementation of the American Innovation and Manufacturing Act. Section 60009, rescission of funding for enforcement, technology, and public information. Section 60010, rescission of funding for greenhouse gas corporate reporting. Section 60011, rescission of funding for environmental product declaration assistance. Section 60012, rescission of funding for methane emissions and waste reduction incentive program for petroleum and natural gas systems. Section 60013, rescission of funding for greenhouse gas, air pollution plans, and implementation grants. Section 60014, rescission of funding for Environmental Protection Agency efficient, accurate, and timely reviews. Section 60015, rescission of funding for low embodied carbon labeling for construction materials. Section 60016, rescission of funding for environmental and climate justice block grants. Section 60017, rescission of funding for ESA recovery plans. Section 60018, rescission of funding for environmental and climate data collection. Section 60019, rescission of neighborhood access and equity grant program. Section 60020, rescission of funding for federal building assistance. Section 60021, rescission of funding for low-carbon materials for federal buildings. Section 60022, rescission of funding for GSA emerging and sustainable technologies. Section 60023, rescission of environmental review implementation funds. Section 60024, rescission of low-carbon transportation materials grants. Section 60025, John F. Kennedy Center for Performing Arts. Section 60026, project sponsor opt-in fees for environmental services. Title VII, Finance. Subtitle A, Tax. Section 70001, references to the Internal Revenue Code of 1986, etc. Chapter 1, providing permanent tax relief for middle-class families and workers. Section 70101, extension and enhancement of reduced rates. Section 70102, extension and enhancement of increased standard deduction. Section 70103, termination of deduction of personal exemptions other than temporary senior deduction. Section 70104, extension and enhancements of increased child tax credit. Section 70105, extension and enhancement of deduction for qualified business income. Section 70106, extension and enhancement of increased estate and gift tax exemption amounts. Section 70107, extension of increased alternative minimum tax exemption amounts and modification of phase-out thresholds. Section 70108, extension and modification of limitation on deduction for qualified residence interest. Section 70109, extension and modification of limitation on casualty loss deduction. Section 70110, termination of miscellaneous itemized deductions other than educator expenses. Section 70111, limitation on tax benefits of itemized deductions. Section 70112, extension and modification of qualified transportation fringe benefits. Section 70113, extension and modification of limitation on deduction and exclusions for moving expenses. Section 70114, extension and modification of limitation on wagering losses. Section 70115, extension and enhancement of increased limitation on contributions to able accounts. Section 70116, extension and enhancement of savers credit allowed for able contributors. Section 70117, extension of rollovers for qualified tuition programs to able accounts permitted. Section 70118, extension of treatment of certain individuals performing services in the Sinai Peninsula and enhancement to include additional areas. Section 70119, extension and modification and exclusion from gross income of student loans discharged on account of death or disability. Section 70120, limitation on individual deductions for certain state and local taxes, etc. Chapter 2, delivering on presidential priorities to provide new middle-class tax relief. Section 70201, no tax on tips. Section 70202, no tax on overtime. Section 70203, no tax on car loan investment. Section 70204, Trump accounts and contribution pilot program. Chapter 3, establishing certainty and competitiveness for American job creators. Subtitle A, permanent U.S. business tax reform and boosting domestic investment. Section 70301, full expensing for certain business property. Section 70302, full expensing of domestic research and experimental expenditures. Section 70303, modification of limitation on business interest. Section 70304, extension and enhancement of paid family and medical leave credit. Section 70305, exceptions from limitations on deduction for business meals. Section 70306, increased dollar limitations for expensing of certain depreciable business assets. Section 70307, special depreciation allowance for qualified production property. Section 70308, enhancement of advanced manufacturing investment credit. Section 70309, spaceports are treated like airports under exempt facility bond rules. Subtitle B, permanent America First international tax reforms. Part 1, foreign tax credit. Section 70311, modifications related to foreign tax credit limitation. Section 70312, modifications to determination of deemed paid credit for taxes properly attributable to tested income. Section 70313, sourcing certain income from the sale of inventory produced in the United States. Part 2, foreign-derived deduction eligible income and net CFC tested income. Section 70321, modification of deduction for foreign-derived deduction eligible income and net CFC tested income. Section 70322, determination of deduction eligible income. Section 70323, rules related to deemed intangible income. Part 3, base erosion minimum tax. Section 70331, extension and modification of base erosion minimum tax amount. Part 4, business interest limitation. Section 70341, coordination of business interest limitation and interest capitalization provisions. Section 70342, definition of adjusted taxable income for business interest limitation. Part 5, other international tax reforms. Section 70351, permanent extension of look-through rule for related controlled foreign corporations. Section 70352, repeal of election for 1 month deferral and determination of taxable year of specified foreign corporations. Section 70353, restoration of limitation on downward attribution of stock ownership in applying constructive ownership rules. Section 70354, modification to pro rata share rules. Chapter 4, investing in American families, communities, and small businesses. Subchapter A, permanent investments in families and children. Section 70401, enhancement of employer-provided child care credit. Section 70402, enhancement of adoption credit. Section 70403, recognizing Indian tribal governments for purposes of determining whether a child has special needs for purposes of the adoption credit. Section 70404, enhancement of the Dependent Care Assistance Program. Section 70405, enhancement of Child and Dependent Care Tax Credit. Subtitle B, permanent investments in students and reforms to tax-exempt institutions. Section 70411, tax credit for contributions of individuals to scholarship-granting organizations. Section 70412, exclusion for employer payments of student loans. Section 70413, additional expenses treated as qualified higher education expenses for purpose of 529 accounts. Section 70414, certain post-secondary credentializing expenses treated as qualified higher education expenses for purposes of 529 accounts. Section 70415, modification of excise tax on investment income of certain private colleges and universities. Section 70416, expanding application of tax on excess compensation within tax-exempt organizations. Subchapter C, permanent investments in community development. Section 70421, permanent renewal and enhancement of opportunity zones. Section 70422, permanent enhancement of low-income housing tax credit. Section 70423, permanent extension of new markets tax credit. Section 70424, permanent and expanded reinstatement of partial deduction for charitable contributions of individuals who do not elect to itemize. Section 70425, 0.5% floor on deduction of contributions made by individuals. Section 70426, 1% floor on deduction of charitable contributions made by corporations. Section 70427, permanent increase in limitations on cover over of tax on distilled spirits. Section 70428, nonprofit community development activities in remote native languages. Section 70429, adjustment of charitable deduction for certain expenses incurred in support of Native Alaskan subsistent whaling. Section 70430, exception to percentage of completion method of accounting for certain residential construction contracts. Subchapter D, permanent investments in small business and rural America. Section 70431, expansion of qualified small business stock gain exclusion. Section 70432, repeal of revision to de minimis rules for third-party network transactions. Section 70433, increase in threshold for requiring information reporting with respect to certain payees. Section 70434, treatment of certain qualified sound recording productions. Section 70435, exclusion of interest on loans secured by rural or agricultural real property. Section 70436, reduction of transfer and manufacturing taxes for certain devices. Section 70437, treatment of capital gains from the sale of certain farmland property. Section 70438, extension of rules for treatment of certain disaster-related personal casualty losses. Chapter 5, ending Green New Deal spending, promoting America First energy, and other reforms. Subchapter A, termination of Green New Deal subsidies. Section 70501, termination of previously owned clean vehicle credit. Section 70502, termination of clean vehicle credit. Section 70503, termination of qualified commercial clean vehicles credit. Section 70504, termination of alternative fuel vehicle refueling property credit. Section 70505, termination of energy efficient home improvement credit. Section 70506, termination of residential clean energy credit. Section 70507, termination of energy efficient commercial building deduction. Section 70508, termination of new energy efficient home credit. Section 70509, termination of cost recovery for energy, property, and qualified clean energy facilities, property, and technology. Section 70510, modifications of zero-emission nuclear power production credit. Section 70511, termination of clean hydrogen production credit. Section 70512, termination and restrictions on clean electricity production credit. Section 70513, termination and restrictions on clean electricity investment credit. Section 70514, phase out and restrictions on advanced manufacturing production credit. Section 70515, restriction on the extension of advanced energy project credit program. Subchapter B, enhancement of America First energy policy. Section 70521, extension and modification of clean fuel production credit. Section 70522, restrictions on carbon oxide sequestration credit. Section 70523, intangible drilling and development costs taken into account for purposes of computing adjusted financial statement income. Section 70524, income from hydrogen storage, carbon capture, advanced nuclear, hydropower, and geothermal energy added to qualifying income of certain publicly traded partnerships. Section 70525, allow for payments to certain individuals who die fuel. Subchapter C, other reforms. Section 70531, modifications to de minimis entry privilege for commercial shipments. Chapter 6, enhancing deduction and income tax credit, guardrails, and other reforms. Section 70601, modification and extension of limitation on excess business losses of non-corporate taxpayers. Section 70602, treatment of payments for partnerships to partners for property or services. Section 70603, excessive employee remuneration from controlled group members and allocation of deduction. Section 70604, third-party litigation funding reforms. Section 70605, excise tax on certain remittance transfers. Section 70606, enforcement provisions with respect to COVID-related employee retention credits. Section 70607, Social Security number requirement for American Opportunity and Lifetime Learning credits. Section 70608, Task Force on the Replacement of the Direct File. Subtitle B, Health. Chapter 1, Medicaid. Chapter A, Reducing Fraud and Improving Enrollment Processes. Section 71101, Moratorium on Implementation of Rule relating to eligibility and enrollment in Medicare savings programs. Section 71102, Moratorium on Implementation of Rule relating to eligibility and enrollment for Medicaid, CHIP, and the Basic Health Program. Section 71103, Reducing Duplicate Enrollment under the Medicaid and CHIP programs. Section 71104, Ensuring deceased individuals do not remain enrolled. Section 71105, Ensuring deceased providers do not remain enrolled. Section 71106, Payment reduction related to certain erroneous excess payments under Medicaid. Section 71107, eligibility redeterminations. Section 71108, revising home equity limit for determining eligibility for long-term care services under the Medicaid program. Section 71109, alien Medicaid eligibility. Section 71110, expansion FMAP for certain states providing payments for health care furnished to certain individuals. Section 71111, expansion of FMAP for emergency Medicaid. Subchapter B, preventing wasteful spending. Section 7112, moratorium on implementation of rule relating to staffing standards for long-term care facilities under the Medicare and Medicaid programs. Section 71113, reducing state Medicaid costs. Section 71114, prohibiting federal Medicaid and CHIP funding for certain items and services. Section 71115, federal payments to prohibited entities. Subchapter C, stopping abusive financing practices. Section 7116, sunsetting increased FMAP incentive. Section 71117, provider taxes. Section 71118, state-directed payments. Section 71119, requirements regarding waiver of uniform tax requirement for Medicaid provider tax. Section 71120, requiring budget neutrality for Medicaid demonstration projects under Section 1115. Subchapter D, increasing personal accountability. Section 71121, requirement for states to establish Medicaid community engagement requirements for certain individuals. Section 71122, modifying cost-sharing requirements for certain expansion individuals under the Medicaid program. Subchapter E, expanding access to care. Section 71123, making certain adjustments to coverage of home or community-based services under Medicaid. Section 71124, determination of FMAP for high-poverty states. Chapter 2, Medicare. Subchapter A, strengthening eligibility requirements. Section 71201, limiting Medicare coverage of certain individuals. Subchapter B, improving services for seniors. Section 71202, temporary payment, increase under the Medicare physician fee schedule to account for exceptional circumstances. Section 71203, expanding and clarifying the exclusion for orphan drugs under the Drug Price Negotiation Program. Section 71204, application of cost living adjustment to non-labor related portion for hospital outpatient department services furnished in Alaska and Hawaii. Chapter 3, health tax. Subchapter A, improving eligibility criteria. Section 71301, permitting premium tax credit only for certain individuals. Section 71302, disallowing premium tax credit during periods of Medicaid ineligibility due to alien status. Subchapter B, preventing waste, fraud, and abuse. Section 71303, requiring verification of eligibility for premium tax credit. Section 71304, disallowing premium tax credit in case of certain coverage enrolled in during special enrollment period. Section 71305, eliminating limitation on recapture of advance payment of premium tax credit. Section 71306, permanent extension of safe harbor for absence of deductible for telehealth services. Section 71307, allowance of bronze and catastrophic plans and connection with health savings accounts. Section 71308, treatment of direct primary care service arrangements. Chapter 4, protecting rural hospitals and providers. Section 71401, Rural Health Transformation Program. Subtitle C, Increase in Debt Limit. Section 72001, Modification of Limitation on the Public Debt. Title 8, Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions. Subtitle A, Exemption of Certain Assets. Section 80001, Exemption of Certain Assets. Subtitle B, Loan Limits. Section 81001, Establishment of Loan Limits for Graduate and Professional Students and Parent Borrowers, Termination of Graduate and Professional Plus Loans. Subtitle C, Loan Repayment. Section 82001, Loan Repayment. Section 82002, Deferment, Forbearance. Section 82003, Loan Rehabilitation. Section 82004, Public Service Loan Forgiveness. Section 82005, Student Loan Servicing. Subtitle D, Pell Grants. Section 83001, Eligibility. Section 83002, Workforce Pell Grants. Section 83003, Pell Shortfall. Section 83004, Federal Pell Grants exclusion relating to other grant aid. Subtitle E, Accountability. Section 84001, Ineligibility based on low earnings outcomes. Subtitle F, Regulatory Relief. Section 85001, Delay of rule relating to borrower defense to repayment. Section 85002, Delay of rule relating to closed school discharges. Subtitle G, Limitation on Authority. Section 86001, Limitation on proposing or issuing regulations and executive actions. Subtitle H, Garden of Heroes. Section 87001, Garden of Heroes.
Subtitle 1, Office of Refugee Resettlement, Section 88001, Potential Sponsor Vetting for Unaccompanied Alien Children Appropriation. Title 9, Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs. Subtitle A, Homeland Security Provisions. Section 90001, Border Infrastructure and Wall System. Section 90002, U.S. Customs and Border Protection Personnel, Fleet Vehicles, and Facilities. Section 90003, Detention Capacity. Section 90004, Border Security, Technology, and Screening. Section 90005, State and Local Assistance. Section 90006, Presidential Residence Protection. Section 90007, Department of Homeland Security Appropriations for Border Support. Subtitle B, Governmental Affairs Provisions. Section 90101, FEHB Improvements. Section 90102, Pandemic Response Accountability Committee. Section 90103, Appropriation for the Office of Management and Budget. Title 10, Committee on the Judiciary. Subtitle A, Immigration and Law Enforcement Matters. Part 1, Immigration Fees. Section 100001, Applicability of the Immigration Laws. Section 100002, Asylum Fee. Section 100003, Employment Authorization Document Fees. Section 100004, Immigration Parole Fee. Section 100005, Special Immigrant Juvenile Fee. Section 100006, Temporary Protected Status Fee. Section 100007, Visa Integrity Fee. Section 100008, Form I-94 Fee. Section 100009, Annual Asylum Fee. Section 100010, Fee relating to renewal and extension of employment authorization for parolees. Section 10011, fee relating to renewal or extension of employment authorization for asylum applicants. Section 10012, fee relating to renewal and extension of employment authorization for aliens granted temporary protected status. Section 10013, fees relating to applications for adjustment of status. Section 10014, electronic system for travel authorization fee. Section 10015, electronic visa update system fee. Section 10016, fee for aliens ordered removed in absentia. Section 10017, inadmissible alien apprehension fee. Section 10018, amendment to authority to apply for asylum. Part 2, immigration and law enforcement funding. Section 10051, appropriation for the Department of Homeland Security. Section 10052, appropriation for U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Section 10053, appropriation for federal law enforcement training centers. Section 10054, appropriation for the Department of Justice. Section 10055, bridging immigration-related deficits experienced nationwide reimbursement fund. Section 10056, appropriation for the Bureau of Prisons. Section 10057, appropriation for the United States Secret Service. Subtitle B, Judiciary Matters. Section 1000101, appropriation to the Administrative Office of the United States Courts. Section 1000102, appropriation to the Federal Judicial Center. Subtitle C, Radiation Exposure Compensation Matters. Section 1000201, extension of fund. Section 1000202, claims relating to atmospheric testing. Section 1000203, claims relating to uranium mining. Section 1000205, limitations on claims. Title I, Committee on Agriculture, Nutrition, and Forestry. Subtitle A, Nutrition. Section 10101, reevaluation of Thrifty Food Plan. A, in general, Section 3 of the Food and Nutrition Act of 2008, 7 U.S.C. 2012, is amended by striking subsection U and inserting the following. U, Thrifty Food Plan. 1, in general, the term Thrifty Food Plan means a diet required to feed a family of 4 persons consisting of a man and a woman ages 20 through 50, a child ages 6 through 8, and a child ages 9 through 11, using the items and quantities of food described in the report of the Department of Agriculture entitled Thrifty Food Plan 2021. And each successor report updated pursuant to this subsection, subject to the conditions that A, the relevant market baskets of the Thrifty Food Plan shall only be changed pursuant to paragraph 4. B, the cost of the Thrifty Food Plan shall be the basis for uniform allotments for all households regardless of the actual composition of the household. And C, the cost of the Thrifty Food Plan may only be adjusted in accordance with this subsection. 2, household adjustments. The Secretary shall make household adjustments using the following ratios of household size as a percentage of the maximum 4-person allotment. A, for a one-person household, 30%. B, for a 2-person household, 55%. C, for a 3-person household, 79%. D, for a 4-person household, 100%. E, for a 5-person household, 119%. F, for a 6-person household, 143%. G, for a 7-person household, 158%. H, for an 8-person household, 180%. I, for a household of 9 persons or more, an additional 22% per person, which additional percentage shall not total more than 200%. 3, allowable cost adjustments. The Secretary shall, A, make cost adjustments in the Thrifty Food Plan for Hawaii and the urban and rural parts of Alaska to reflect the cost of food in Hawaii and urban and rural Alaska. B, make cost adjustments in the separate Thrifty Food Plans for Guam and the Virgin Islands of the United States to reflect the cost of food in those states, but not to exceed the cost of food in the 50 states and the District of Columbia. And C, on October 1st, 2025, and on each October 1st thereafter, adjust the cost of the Thrifty Food Plan to reflect changes in the Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers published by the Bureau of Labor Statistics of the Department of Labor for the most recent 12-month period ending in June. 4, reevaluation of market baskets. A, reevaluation. Not earlier than October 1st, 2027, the Secretary may reevaluate the market baskets of the Thrifty Food Plan based on current food prices, food composition data, consumption patterns, and dietary guidance. B, cost neutrality. The Secretary shall not increase the cost of the Thrifty Food Plan based on a reevaluation under this paragraph. B, conforming amendments. 1, Section 16C1A22 of the Food and Nutrition Act of 2008, 7 U.S.C. 2025 C1A22 is amended by striking Section 3U4 and inserting Section 3U3. 2, Section 19A2A2 of the Food and Nutrition Act of 2008, 7 U.S.C. 2028A2A2 is amended by striking Section 3U4 and inserting Section 3U3. 3, Section 27A2 of the Food and Nutrition Act of 2008, 7 U.S.C. 2036A2 is amended by striking Section 3U4, each place it appears, and inserting Section 3U3. Section 1012, modifications to SNAP work requirements for able-bodied adults. A, exceptions. Section 6.0 of the Food and Nutrition Act of 2008, 7 U.S.C. 20150 is amended by striking paragraph 3 and inserting the following. 3, exceptions. Paragraph 2 shall not apply to an individual if the individual is A, under 18 or over 65 years of age, B, medically certified as physically or mentally unfit for employment, C, a parent or other member of a household with responsibility for a dependent child under 14 years of age, D, otherwise exempt under subsection D2, E, a pregnant woman, F, an Indian or urban Indian, as such terms are defined in paragraphs 13 and 28 of Section 4 of the Indian Healthcare Improvement Act, or G, a California Indian described in Section 809A of the Indian Healthcare Improvement Act. B, standardizing enforcement. Section 604 of the Food and Nutrition Act of 2008, 7 U.S.C. 201504 is amended, 1, in subparagraph A by striking clause 2 and inserting the following. 2, is in a non-contiguous state and has an unemployment rate that is at or above 1.5 times the national unemployment rate, 8%, and 2, by adding at the end the following. C, definition of non-contiguous state. 1, in general, in this paragraph, the term non-contiguous state means a state that is not one of the contiguous 48 states or the District of Columbia. 2, exclusion. The term non-contiguous state does not include Guam or the Virgin Islands of the United States. C, waiver for non-contiguous states. Section 6.0 of the Food and Nutrition Act of 2008, 7 U.S.C. 20150 is amended, 1, by redesignating paragraph 7 as paragraph 8, and 2, by inserting after paragraph 6 the following. 7, exemption for non-contiguous states. A, definition of non-contiguous state. 1, in general, in this paragraph, the term non-contiguous state means a state that is not one of the contiguous 48 states or the District of Columbia. 2, exclusions. In this paragraph, the term non-contiguous state does not include Guam or the Virgin Islands of the United States. B, exemption. Subject to subparagraph D, the Secretary may exempt individuals in a non-contiguous state from compliance with the requirements of paragraph 2 if, 1, the state agency submits to the Secretary a request for that exemption made in such form and at such time as the Secretary may require, and including the information described in subparagraph C, and 2, the Secretary determines that based on that request, the state agency is demonstrating a good faith effort to comply with the requirements of paragraph 2. C, good faith effort determination. In determining whether a state agency is demonstrating a good faith effort or for purposes of subparagraph B2, the Secretary shall consider 1, any action taken by the state agency toward compliance with the requirements of paragraph 2. 2, any significant barriers to or challenges in meeting those requirements, including barriers or challenges relating to funding, design, development, procurement, or installation of necessary systems or resources. 3, the detailed plan and timeline of the state agency for achieving full compliance with those requirements, including any milestones as defined by the Secretary. And 4, any other criteria determined appropriate by the Secretary. D, duration of exemption. 1, in general, an exemption granted under subparagraph B shall expire not later than December 31st, 2028, and may not be renewed beyond that date. 2, early termination. The Secretary may terminate an exemption granted under subparagraph B prior to that expiration date of that exemption if the Secretary determines that the state agency, 1, has failed to comply with the reporting requirements described in subparagraph E, or 2, based on the information provided pursuant to subparagraph E, failed to make continued good faith efforts towards compliance with the requirements of this subsection. E, reporting requirements. A state agency granted an exemption under subparagraph B shall submit to the Secretary 1, quarterly progress reports on the status of the state agency in achieving the milestones toward full compliance described in subparagraph C3, and 2, information on specific risks or newly identified barriers or challenges to full compliance, including the plan of the state agency to mitigate those risks, barriers, or challenges. Section 10103, availability of standard utility allowances based on receipt of energy assistance. A, standard utility allowance. Section 5E 6C 4I of the Food and Nutrition Act of 2008, 7 U.S.C. 2014 E6C 4I is amended by inserting with an elderly or disabled member after households. B, third-party energy assistance payments. Section 5K4 of the Food and Nutrition Act of 2008, 7 U.S.C. 2014 K4 is amended, 1, in subparagraph A by inserting without an elderly or disabled member before shall be, and 2, in subparagraph B by inserting with an elderly or disabled member before under a state law. Section 10104, restrictions on internet expenses. Section 5E6 of the Food and Nutrition Act of 2008, 7 U.S.C. 2014 E6 is amended by adding at the end of the following. E, restrictions on internet expenses. Any service fee associated with internet connection shall not be used in computing the excess shelter expense deduction under this paragraph. Section 10105, matching funds requirements. A, in general, Section 4A of the Food and Nutrition Act of 2008, 7 U.S.C. 2013A, is amended, 1, by striking A subject to and inserting the following. A, program. 1, establishment subject to, and 2, by adding at the end the following. 2, state quality control incentive. A, definition of payment error rate. In this paragraph, the term payment error rate has the meaning given the term in section 16C2. B, state cost share. 1, in general, beginning in fiscal year 2028, if the payment error rate of a state is determined under Clause 2 is 1, less than 6%, the federal share of the cost of the allotment described in paragraph 1 for that state in a fiscal year shall be 100%, and the state share shall be 0%. 2, equal to or greater than 6%, but less than 8%. The federal share of the cost of the allotment described in paragraph 1 for that state in a fiscal year shall be 95%, and the state share shall be 5%. 3, equal to or greater than 8%, but less than 10%. The federal share of the cost of the allotment described in paragraph 1 for that state in a fiscal year shall be 90%, and the state share shall be 10%. And 4, equal to or greater than 10%. The federal share of the cost of the allotment described in paragraph 1 for that state in a fiscal year shall be 85%, and the state share shall be 15%. 2, elections. 1, fiscal year 2028. For fiscal year 2028, to calculate the applicable state share under Clause 1, a state may elect to use the payment error rate of the state from fiscal year 2025 or 2026. 2, fiscal year 2029 and thereafter. For fiscal year 2029 and each fiscal year thereafter, to calculate the applicable state share under Clause 1, the Secretary shall use the payment error rate of the state for the third fiscal year preceding the fiscal year for which the state share is being calculated. 3, maximum federal payment. The Secretary may not pay towards the cost of an allotment described in paragraph 1 an amount that is greater than the applicable federal share under paragraph 2. 4, waiver authority. A, in general, the Secretary may waive the requirement under paragraph 2 for a non-contiguous state excluding Guam and the Virgin Islands of the United States for a period of not more than 2 years if, 1, the Secretary determines that the waiver is necessary, and 2, the non-contiguous state is, 1, actively implementing a corrective action plan as described in Section 275.17 of Title VII Code of Federal Regulations or a successor regulation, and 2, carrying out any other activities determined necessary by the Secretary to reduce its payment error rate as defined in paragraph 2. B, termination of authority. The waiver authority under subparagraph A shall terminate on the date that is 4 years after the date of enactment of this paragraph. B, limitation on authority. Section 13A1 of the Food and Nutrition Act of 2008, 7 U.S.C. 2022 A1 is amended in the first sentence by inserting or the payment or disposition of a state share under Section 4A2 after 16C 1D12. Section 10106, administrative cost sharing. Section 16A of the Food and Nutrition Act of 2008, 7 U.S.C. 2025A, is amended in the matter preceding paragraph 1 by striking agency an amount equal to 50% and inserting agency through fiscal year 2026, 50%, and for fiscal year 2027 and each fiscal year thereafter, 25%. Section 10107, National Education and Obesity Prevention Grant Program. Section 28D1F of the Food and Nutrition Act of 2008, 7 U.S.C. 2036A D1F is amended by striking for fiscal year 2016 and each subsequent fiscal year, and inserting for each of fiscal years 2016 through 2025. Section 10108, Alien SNAP eligibility. Section 6F of the Food and Nutrition Act of 2008, 7 U.S.C. 2015F, is amended to read as follows. F, no individual who is a member of a household otherwise eligible to participate in the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program under this section shall be eligible to participate in the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program as a member of that or any other household unless he or she is, 1, a resident of the United States, and 2, either A, a citizen or national of the United States, B, an alien lawfully admitted for permanent residence as an immigrant as defined by sections 101A15 and 101A20 of the Immigration and Nationality Act, excluding, among others, alien visitors, tourists, diplomats, and students who enter the United States temporarily with no intention of abandoning their residence in a foreign country. C, an alien who has been granted the status of Cuban and Haitian entrant as defined in Section 501E of the Refugee Education Assistance Act of 1980, Public Law 96-422, or D, an individual who lawfully resides in the United States in accordance with a compact of free association referred to in Section 402B2G of the Personal Responsibility and Work Opportunity Reconciliation Act of 1996. The income less at state option or a pro rata share and financial resources of the individual rendered ineligible to participate in the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program under this subsection shall be considered in determining the eligibility and the value of the allotment of the household of which such individual is a member. Subtitle B, Forestry, Section 10201, Rescission of Amounts for Forestry. The unobligated balances of amounts appropriated by the following provisions of Public Law 117-169 are rescinded. 1. Paragraphs 3 and 4 of Section 23001A, 136 Stat 2023. 2. Paragraphs 1 through 4 of Section 23002A, 136 Stat 2025. 3. Section 23003A2, 136 Stat 2026. 4. Section 23005, 136 Stat 2027. Subtitle C, Commodities. Section 10301, Effective Reference Price, A, Effective Reference Price. Section 11118B2 of the Agricultural Act of 2014, 7 U.S.C. 90118B2 is amended by striking 85 and inserting beginning with the crop year 2025, 88. B, Reference Price. Section 1111 of the Agricultural Act of 2014, 7 U.S.C. 9011, is amended by striking paragraph 19 and inserting the following. 19, Reference Price. A, in general, effective beginning with the 2025 crop year, subject to subparagraphs B and C, the term reference price with respect to a covered commodity for a crop year means the following. 1, for wheat, $6.35 per bushel. 2, for corn, $4.10 per bushel. 3, for grain, sorghum, $4.40 per bushel. 4, for barley, $5.45 per bushel. 5, for oats, $2.65 per bushel. 6, for long grain rice, $16.90 per hundredweight. 7, for medium grain rice, $16.90 per hundredweight. 8, for soybeans, $10 per bushel. 9, for other oil seeds, $23.75 per hundredweight. 10, for peanuts, $630 per ton. 11, for dry peas, $13.10 per hundredweight. 12, for lentils, $23.75 per hundredweight. 13, for small chickpeas, $22.65 per hundredweight. 14, for large chickpeas, $25.65 per hundredweight. 15, for seed cotton, 42 cents per pound. B, effectiveness. Effective beginning with the 2031 crop year, the reference price is defined in subparagraph A with respect to a covered commodity shall equal the reference price in the previous crop year multiplied by 1.005. C, limitation. In no case shall a reference price for a covered commodity exceed 113% of the reference price for such covered commodity listed in subparagraph A. Section 10302, base acres. Section 1112 of the Agricultural Act of 2014, 7 U.S.C. 9012, is amended, 1, in subsection D3A by striking 2023 and inserting 2031, and by adding at the end of the following. E, additional base acres. 1, in general, as soon as practicable after the date of enactment of this subsection and notwithstanding subsection A, the Secretary shall provide notice to owners of eligible farms pursuant to paragraph 3 and allocate to those eligible farms a total of not more than an additional 30 million base acres in the manner provided in this subsection. An owner of a farm that is eligible to receive an allocation of base acres may elect to not receive that allocation by notifying the Secretary not later than 90 days after receipt of the notice provided by the Secretary under this paragraph. 2, content of notice. The notice under paragraph 1 shall include the following. A, information that the allocation is occurring. B, information regarding the eligibility of the farm for an allocation of base acres under paragraph 3. C, information regarding how an owner may appeal a determination of ineligibility for an allocation of base acres under paragraph 3.
Through an appeals process established by the Secretary. 3, eligibility. A, in general, subject to subparagraph D, effective beginning with the 2026 crop year, a farm is eligible to receive an allocation of base acres if, with respect to the farm, the amount described in subparagraph B exceeds the amount described in subparagraph C. B, 5-year average sum. The amount described in this subparagraph with respect to a farm is the sum of I, the 5-year average of I, the acreage planted on the farm to all covered commodities for harvest, grazing, haying, silage, or other similar purposes for the 2019 through 2023 crop years. And 2, any acreage on the farm that the producers were prevented from planting during the 2019 through 2023 crop years to covered commodities because of drought, flood, or other natural disaster, or other conditions beyond the control of the producers as determined by the Secretary, plus 2, the lesser of 1, subsection 1, 15% of the total acres on the farm, and 2, the 5-year average of AA, the acreage planted on the farm to eligible non-covered commodities for harvest, grazing, haying, silage, or other similar purposes for the 2019 through 2023 crop years, and subsection BB, any acreage on the farm that producers were prevented from planting during the 2019 through 2023 crop years to eligible non-covered commodities because of drought, flood, or other natural disaster, or other condition beyond the control of the producers, as determined by the Secretary. C, total number of base acres for covered commodities. The amount described in this subparagraph with respect to a farm is the total number of base acres for covered commodities on the farm, excluding unassigned crop base, as in effect on September 30, 2024. D, effect of no recent plantings of covered commodities in the case of a farm for which the amount determined under Clause I of subparagraph B is equal to 0. That farm shall be ineligible to receive an allocation of base acres under the subsection. E, acreage planted on the farm to eligible non-covered commodities defined in this paragraph. The term acreage planted on the farm to eligible non-covered commodities means acreage planted on a farm to commodities other than covered commodities, trees, bushes, vines, grass, or pasture, including cropland that was idle or fallow, as defined by the Secretary. 4, number of base acres, subject to paragraphs 3 and 8. The number of base acres allocated to an eligible farm shall, subsection A, be equal to the difference obtained by subtracting the amount determined under subparagraph C of paragraph 3 from the amount determined under subparagraph B of that paragraph. And B, include unassigned crop base. 5, allocation of acres. A, allocation. The Secretary shall allocate the number of base acres under paragraph 4 among those covered commodities planted on the farm at any time during the 2019 through 2023 crop years. B, allocation formula. The allocation of additional base acres for covered commodities shall be in proportion to the ratio of subsection I, the 5-year average of I, the acreage planted on the farm to each covered commodity for harvest, grazing, haying, silage, or other similar purposes for the 2019 through 2023 crop years. And 2, any acreage on the farm that producers were prevented from planting during the 2019 through 2023 crop years to that covered commodity because of drought, flood, or other natural disaster, or other condition beyond the control of the producers as determined by the Secretary to the 5-year average determined under paragraph 3BI. Inclusion of all 5 years in average. For the purpose of determining a 5-year acreage average under subparagraph B for a farm, the Secretary shall not exclude any crop year in which a covered commodity was not planted. D, treatment of multiple planting or prevented planting. For the purpose of determining under subparagraph B the acreage on a farm that producers planted or were prevented from planting during the 2019 through 2023 crop years to covered commodities, if the acreage that was planted or prevented from being planted was devoted to other covered commodity in the same crop year, other than a covered commodity produced under an established practice of double cropping, the owner may elect the covered commodity to be used for that year in determining the 5-year average, but may not include both the initial covered commodity and the subsequent covered commodity. E, limitation. The allocation of additional base acres among covered commodities on a farm under this paragraph may not result in a total number of base acres for the farm in excess of the number of acres on the farm. 6, reduction by the Secretary. In carrying out this subsection, if the total number of eligible acres allocated to base acres across all farms in the United States under this subsection would exceed 30 million acres, the Secretary shall apply an across-the-board prorated reduction to the number of eligible acres to ensure the number of allocated base acres under this subsection is equal to 30 million acres. 7, payment yield. Beginning with crop year 2026, for the purpose of making price loss coverage payments under Section 1116,